Meeting for 6 o'clock to order. If I just want to note before we even get started in the roll call that Tracy Hare, Councillor Hare, is the chair of this committee. She is ill this evening, and so I will fill in for her tonight. Call the roll. Councillor Bishop.
Here.
Councillor Rebs.
Here.
And Paul Bissonnette is here as well. All right. The first item under discussion is Solar on Earth Solar Farm dollar credits, which was referred to this committee at the October 23rd meeting, regular council meeting.
Thank you again. Good to see you all. I appreciate the time and opportunity to come back before you again. Per Rachel's email, I understand that I'm here to just clarify any questions that may have arisen since my last presentation. Answer any questions you may have at this point. Is there anyone that wasn't present for my presentation that might want a quick refresher? Or
I was not, and don't feel that you have to backpedal a huge presentation for me, but if you want to give a 10% shortcut summary,
Sure.
then you can do that.
You got it. What I've been discussing with Jacob in the town is the enrollment of the community solar program net energy billing credits. We connect you through your utility provider, Versant, to a local solar development. When that goes live, those credits will offset your billable kilowatt hours off of Versant's bill. They will then invoice you at a discounted rate of 85% of whatever that monetary dollar amount is of those kilowatt hours that Versant has read and said you use that month. How you save the money is they still pay Versant their full amount. But what I mean by pay is when they bring those credits over from the solar field, those aren't kilowatt hours, that's not power that Versant generated from the nuclear power from the grid. It came from a solar farm. So when you enroll, you essentially are giving Versant permission to share your meter information with the developer. Developer allocates that power to your utility bill. Those kilowatt hours get offset, leaving just your, I believe Versant calls it the public policy charge, because they're still your utility provider.
Just to clarify, we're CMP.
CMP, okay, sorry. Same with CMP, nothing's different at all. They still remain your utility provider. They're still maintaining the grid. They're still setting alignment out, trucks, equipment. So you'll see your CMP, thank you, calls it your delivery service or your delivery charge. Going forward, that will still be on there. So when you get your bill back, you'll still have the service charge from CMP on there. However, anything that came from a charge that was contributed to that kilowatt hour, so their actual charges at their rate, supply and delivery, and any taxes involved, which I don't think I mentioned the last time. The taxes generated from the total amount of billable kilowatt hours are also offset too, because solar credits are tax exempt. So it's usually a minimal thing. It's $6 or $8, $10, $12, depending on the size of your utility bill. But still, that's something that wasn't taken into consideration for the proposal. So you'll have a few extra dollars a month of savings there too, because you won't be paying tax on the billable kilowatt hours. So you'll get that utility bill back from CMP with just a delivery charge. And anything that would have been a billable kilowatt hour would have been covered by the solar developer. So you take care of CMP, they invoice you at the 85% rate of whatever that dollar amount, again, based off of CMP's current rates at the time. Those kilowatt hours have a value, and that value is determined by their delivery and their service, rather their standard supply rate. Or if you were the third-party supplier, whatever rate you're paying there, they get covered, they invoice you at 85%, saving you $15 every month. Doesn't cost anything to enroll in the program, and if different leadership were to come in, it doesn't cost anything to get out of the program if they were to have different ideologies or different perspectives on solar, even though it is saving the constituents of Bucksport quite a bit of money. I did have a proposal that was done up. I don't know if Rachel, she did ask for a copy of it electronically. She said that she was going to disseminate that to all of you. Did you get that as well, Stephen?
I don't know. Let me see.
Just in case you didn't, I brought a copy here, just in case for this exact scenario. To see the raw numbers of the savings potential
I did not get that.
having enrolled into the program. Well, I'll skip through because the first few pages are just a description of the program anyway.
Yep.
This is the nitty gritty right there. What you're looking at is two snapshots. This one is if everything were not to change whatsoever, exactly what you'd save every month. Every year. If nothing were to happen, the very next column is your actual savings based on an algorithm and a formula we have in there that takes into consideration the rate increases by CMP, and how much they increase their rates, usually it's biannually, sometimes sadly quarterly. So your FAR column there, where your estimated savings high, takes into their rate increase incrementally over the span of the program. So you end up saving quite a bit of money.
How much of this is subsidized on the front?
I'm sorry,
How much of this is subsidized on the front end for the initial
93%.
93%?
Mhm.
That's any question?
They've been through this already. This is Jacob's, I think, third run at this now.
Just so we can have it said again, two of the questions that I've heard seem pretty simple, but let's just get them out there.
Of course.
The first is, how do you make, or your company, I don't mean you, how does your company make money on this? Like, what's the gain there? And then second of all, and I'm asking the question so that it can be answered, what does this cover here in town in terms of the solar fields it's all the solar fields that we have here in town, correct?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. The solar project that you'll be attached to is determined based off the amount of meters they all oversee. So which project, I won't know until I am able to submit with the application your CMP bills that you oversee. But yes, they 100% are local solar farms. They don't outsource anything from anything out of state. They keep the power right here, and that's the point of the program. And essentially making it mandatory for developers to have the taxpayers, the subscribers to these farms, so that power is spoken for before that farm even goes live. So it eliminates the possibility of power being there to essentially outsource across state lines or something.
Yep. And you did say
Um,
that last time.
Yep. The developers, once they get and show the state a full subscription to that solar farm, the state then opens the gates for grant money. The developers take care of us. We're not a commission position. They do that intentionally because they don't want this to be a pushy sales tactic type of approach to this. This is a Maine-backed program just to push clean and energy initiatives. So when a developer needs things like updating service stations, substations, but it's CMP property, not their property. When that project is finally gone 20 years from now, they can't take that with them. So they turn to the state and say, well, we want grant money. The state says, well, great, we want you to allow subscribers to this farm so the power stays in the state. And you're bringing more clean energy into our grid, so here you go. Well, they turn around and they look at my company and say, we have a 5 megawatt farm going up, fill it, essentially. And that's how I get taken care of by the developer.
Curious, Jacob, your thoughts?
I'm supportive of it. There is some added workload to staff, just because if I understand correctly, it's yet another invoice that staff are gonna have to be receiving on all of our electric accounts, correct?
Yes, but if I may elaborate just real quick, just in case that was segueing into another question or anything. Your staff, or who would be inevitably responsible for paying the utility bills and this one as well, have the option. They can ask Ampion, who is the developer, to consolidate the utility bills. So if you oversee 8 to 10 meters, each one of those meters have a serial number or like an invoice number for your CMP invoices. They can consolidate each meter number onto one invoice where it would say the meter number, the amount of kilowatt hours CMP said you used, that monetary amount based off of the CMP's current rates, and then the discounted rate. And that would be like line items on one invoice, where a lot of people prefer it that way just because it's isolated on one physical invoice. Some, though, I will be honest, like a tit for tat. They want this CMP utility bill and that solar invoice to coincide with each other. So when the filing purpose or whatever, they say, okay, this is meter number, blah, blah, blah. This was the invoice that covered the kilowatt hours from this meter, and they want it done that way. It's all a matter of just their preference, but there are options out there to really take that easement off of that overload of an influx of, a bill for bill, so to speak.
What's our contract look like with you if we lost the subsidy? If the subsidy went away, are we expected to pick up the difference?
Nope, you go right back to just paying CMP how you were.
And how does this play into the solar?
The
Has
two,
nothing to do with it. We have two different solar fields that we own, and it's
We just
completely
stay separate.
from that.
that was the question I was attempting to ask earlier. Yep.
How does
Well
this, Eric, you and I talked about this, we're a part of Maine Power Options. How does that play into this?
We would need to see a copy of your third-party supplier's contract. Depending on when you, or Maine Power Options enrolled you into that agreement, some I've seen do date back far enough where there isn't verbiage that prohibits you from enrolling into any program that's going to offset your billable kilowatt hours. Because what they've been doing recently is they essentially negotiate with you, saying you're going to, based off of your history, you're gonna use X amount of kilowatt hours for the remainder of your term. So we're gonna bill you at 8 cents on the kilowatt dollar, assuming you use X amount of kilowatt hours. And then obviously if you enroll into a net energy billing situation like you would be with this, that will offset and essentially null and void that contract, right? So we had to comb through there to make sure there's not verbiage in there that prohibits you from that. However, every situation we run into where there is, generally, and especially with a town with a footprint the size of yours, and Maine Power Options is on board with us. They've got this call from us now for 2 years running. What they generally do is just opt you out of the contract. They have people that are vested in this. They understand what to say and how to say it to where you can use it to your advantage. However, and I'm being completely transparent, there have been situations where Constellation specifically, if they're a third-party supplier, Zoom Energy, they like to really push back. They really are insistent that, hey, you're null and voiding your contract. This is now your penalty. Well, the first year savings that most towns will see far exceed what that penalty would have been when enrolling in a program. So just to give you a quick example, I just enrolled at Somerset County Jail last week. They were in a third-party contract. They were gonna have to pay $12,600 to get out of their third-party contract. Their first year savings was $32,000. So they were like, no problem. They didn't even bat an eyelash. So it's one of those things where, yeah, to be honest, an extra phone call, maybe an extra step. We comb through and look for all that for you, so you don't have to really allocate manpower to do that. Any steps that we need to navigate through from whatever findings we do find, we communicate that with you and or whoever you allocate to be the representative for the town to enroll into this. And we just kind of help navigate through there. We have client services, that three-way phone calls with MPO and your third-party supplier. So our team too is very vested in Maine utility law. So they keep kind of everybody like within their lane, so to speak. So to avoid any kind of scare tactics that come with third-party suppliers a lot when you do start navigating down that communication lines where you might want to be backing out of it.
How is it that you came to us now in this month and you haven't been here previously when we had a lot more construction?
That is a very good question. I'm glad you brought that up. And we haven't been able to enroll municipalities. This state will have been involved in this program for 7 years in January. The program itself nationwide has been around for 13. Our company personally is at almost 12. They're pioneers in this. It started out where it was opened up for residential homeowners only. But then they found that was taking forever to fill the size of a farm by subscribers at the small, footprint that a home has. So then they opened it up, and a lot of times the homeowners are like, well, I have a pizza shop, I have an auto body shop. For years, we were going back to legislation and saying, hey, let's bring in schools. I mean, schools are massive. Let's bring in towns. You guys oversee so many meters, and it's taxpayer dollars anyway. That's the goal, is to save the taxpayer money with this program in general. And obviously to ease the looking at the solar farms on the state side of things. However, what the developers were doing was saying, well, Let me give you an example. I just enrolled 2 weeks ago the Sanford School District. Two IGS accounts, 3.5 megawatts they use of power. The developer's telling the state, like, if we enroll an entity of this magnitude, that's 75-80% of our farm. If something were to happen where a superintendent or some leadership came in and had different feelings about solar and wanted to get out, we run into the chance that now 3/4 of this farm is gonna, all of a sudden be vacant. And that's terrifying to the developers. They like having that farm full with small little entities where if Joe's Pizza Shop backs out, it doesn't leave a massive vacancy on that farm. So what we've done is said, well, we'll put in a clause where if someone wants to back out, they just are agreeing to give us the time to have me fill that spot. So the opt-out term is exactly that. Give us 90 days to fill this void or the vacancy you're going to leave on that farm until you're completely out of the program. And however long it takes me to do is generally the term where you are then free and clear and opted out of the program. But we couldn't enroll municipalities up until Bangor was the first city we went to when they opened the doors. So I'm going to say it's been 18 months, 20 months tops. And we've been going just after the big ones first and then trickling down from there. Not that you're really small by any means on a pecking order, but Bangor enrolled the second they heard the presentation and saw the opportunity. They've been on it now for almost a solid year as far as times the enrollment and when they got the credits generated, and now they're getting the solar
Where are you
credits.
with the RSU right now?
Which one?
Have you spoken to our RSU yet?
Not yet, no. Generally, what we like to do is get the towns on board first. And that's literally my next question. The second a town enrolls, I turn to you and say, do you know anyone on the school board? How can you navigate me to the right person there? And it's always good going into the school board of directors by saying, the town is on board, they've enrolled in the community solar, and they, of course, presented me to you. They want you to do the same.
There's no way,
Rich has a question when you have a chance.
okay. Like years ago, there was power options out there for citizens that if you enrolled in, but sometimes if like CMP's rates drop, your bill didn't because you were locked in with them. So you were saving money, but now you're not. Is there any possible scenario where that could happen here?
Well, I think what you're referring to again is like the standard offer versus like a third-party supplier. This doesn't control your rates whatsoever. So if your rates drop, and technically so does your savings because you're just paying less per kilowatt hour, right? If your rates increase, it always sucks, but you're saving more money because you're now paying more for your power. But this program does not control the rate you're paying. And whatever rate you're currently at the time, when that solar developer offsets those kilowatt hours, they multiply those by the exact current rate at that time that is set by the MPUC and CMP and whatever your third-party supplier has their rate for your supply portion. That becomes a dollar amount. That gets taken care of by the solar developer. They invoice you at 85% of that dollar amount. But this cannot control your rates. This cannot... you pay less because you're being invoiced less, but you're being invoiced less because another entity, if you will, the developer, has now paid the current rate, whether higher or lower, that was your kilowatt hours.
The school is on community solar with the Ampion one that's here in town. They've been on for over 2 years. We had the option to go on, but our contract that we had did not allow us to. But the one question I do have is we do have the 9 medium accounts that are attached to the town garage. Those are the medium-sized accounts through CFP.
MGS, yeah.
And since we added those, our bills on the waterfront were roughly $1,375. And since we've been on the program over the last 7 years, our bills are almost $1,500. So we're actually paying a little bit more, even though we have the solar trying to offset that. So will this actually help get us lower, or are we still going to be paying more than what we should be paying?
This can only help because, again, you're going to be invoiced at whatever dollar amount those credits are valued at when that solar developer offsets those kilowatt hours. They're going to invoice you at an 85% rate. So the only reason you would be paying overall more for your electricity is if the physical rates or the delivery charge, because they have obviously increased that as well, go up. So even though you're seeing a savings, you're still paying more than you were this time last year. But because last year the delivery rate was 7 cents and the supply rate was 8 cents, but now, you know, delivery rate's 10 and supply is 10, unless you're with a third-party supplier. So see what I'm saying? So you're paying more. And what happens a lot of times too, especially with third-party suppliers, and nothing against main power options, but when they enroll people into this third-party supply terms, what a lot of people don't realize is that third-party supplier doesn't fall under the MPUC, okay? So MPO goes out, they look to the town of Bucksport, all the meters you oversee, they enroll you into Constellation third-party energy because at the time they're offering 8 cents a kilowatt hour as opposed to CMP's 10, saving you 2 cents per kilowatt hour, could equal hundreds of dollars in some of your meters a month. What doesn't always happen, and what I see sadly almost every day, is that now that 2-year term that they MPO enrolled you in with Constellation for your third-party supply is now up. What that means is you automatically are renewed, right, with Constellation. But what Constellation now legally can do, because they aren't bound by the MPUC, is they can change that rate to whatever they want. So you're not physically using more power at the fire station or wherever the meters you're talking about right now, but you're paying, instead of 8 cents now, 18. So they're covering the 2 cents difference they saved you over the course of 2 or 3 years, but now they're making 6 or 8 more cents on you per kilowatt hour, which is in the tune of hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So they don't have to go to the MPUC and say, we're gonna change these rates now, because they're a third party. They can just change those rates. And it's a very common misconception I see almost every day. This will happen. Those rates will go up. They don't realize that's what's happening because they don't look at that little blue line on their supply page that they're now paying 16 cents instead of 8. And so what they do is they try to combat that by enrolling into something like community solar where they're going to save their, start saving. But that rate keeps going up. So they enroll, the rate keeps going up, and they're like, I don't get it. I enrolled in the solar. I'm supposed to be saving money, but I'm still paying more. 9.5 times out of 10, it is definitely that scenario. And the other time, it's just the delivery to or the delivery charge. Sometimes meters are reclassified. If you brought in heat pumps somewhere where there used to be gas heat, say you surround the whole building now with heat pumps, you've doubled your kilowatt hour usage. That then changed your classification from small general service to medium general service. Now, instead of paying $49.95 for a service charge, you're paying $252.95 a month, right? So your overall fees to CMP that aren't offset by the kilowatt hour program, the community solar, i.e. the delivery, the service charge, it has now tripled. You see what I'm saying? Even though you're enrolled in with a program that's offsetting your kilowatt hours and your cost to those. Does that make sense?
It does. So we have Revision Energy.
Okay.
They take care of 9 of our medium-sized accounts, the
Yep.
waterfront being one of them. And then we're also signed up with Maine. You mentioned
Main power options.
Main power options.
Yep.
How are we still not seeing savings on those bills? How are we still going up? So you're saying that we're enrolled in solar, we have solar, and we're also with this other party,
Yep.
but still we're paying more because we're doing all this stuff to do the clean energy. We're being billed higher because someone's losing out somewhere.
No,
We should be seeing
without
savings by now.
I would agree with you, and without being able to look at your bills, please understand that I am going blind
No,
on
I
this
understand.
question. What I'm, based off my experiences and what I see on a daily basis, what I can only speculate is that you're paying more for your supply. So the main power options entity oversees just a supply portion of your bill. In this case, I think you said it was Constellation. I'm sorry. I don't think you told me who the third-party supplier was.
I don't know who that one is. I know we have Revision,
Yep,
and then yeah,
It's just
Wait.
revision, Rich.
it's just Revision.
Just
Revision, okay, so your third-party supplier Revision probably did have verbiage in their contract that you couldn't enroll in the net energy billing. So those kilowatt hours on the Revision end aren't being offset. So if anything, the delivery side of your CMP bill is still being offset, but because that's only half, you're not seeing the 15% or whatever the savings were offered to you at the time you enrolled, because Revision, one, those kilowatt hours aren't being offset, so you're still paying the 1,000, 5,000 kilowatt hours that month at Revision's rate. And I assure you that revisions rate this time last year, if your term has now come up and you've now renewed with them, but now it's not the agreed upon rate, it's now up to revision what they charge you, that's what's happened. Your rate has gone up on your supply. You've probably been seeing an offset in kilowatt hours on your delivery, but that percentage off of those billable kilowatt hours doesn't come close to the more you're paying now for your supply. MPO only oversees your supply. CMP and MPUC are who control what you pay for your delivery. Is that clear? Anything?
That makes sense.
I would love to sit down with you and look at your utility bills. That way I can comb right through it right there for you and explain it so you can walk out of there like you're an energy aficionado.
I can show you the dashboard we have for revision that shows what we're generating and all of it.
A lot of times what I do, and especially for those towns that do have solar arrays that they do have offsetting their kilowatt hours, there's a pecking order usually in their utility bills where the biggest one usually gets taken all the kilowatt hours first, and then it trickles down from there. We can still enroll you. But having solar arrays doesn't null and void you from enrolling in this program. What we can do is just any kilowatt hours after that trickle process that are remaining that get carried up and charged to you by CMP, you can enroll those and just save 15% on those.
Question for Rich and Jacob real quick before we have to wrap this up. Do we have any grants pending that a subsidized program would interfere with us being able to qualify for or participate in?
I believe so.
I don't think so.
What we're, I think, essentially looking for this evening is, we definitely still need to verify that we'd be allowed to do this under the third-party agreement that we have. But we'd be looking for whether or not to place a resolve on your next agenda enrolling into this program pending a review.
Can we get a review that he comes back and gets to sit down and actually look at the our direct bills to see a little bit more of a direct impact for what it's gonna do for our math, not presentation math, but Town of Bucksport math for
Fine with that.
a direct impact for us? That'd be good.
Are you able to do that before the 18th of next month?
Absolutely.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
To recommend that a meeting transpire between our town manager to assess direct impact on the town's electric bill for a resolved consideration next meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The next item, and we are gonna go past 6:30 on this, so, the services committee meeting should take 15-ish minutes, so, the next discussion item is draft ambulance service fire protection contracts.
Yes, this is something that we talked about during the budget process, and we have talked at finance briefly previously, is looking at the ambulance services agreement that we have with the towns of Verona, Island, and town of Orland, and as well as the fire protection agreement that we have with the town of Verona Island. What I can tell, the last agreement on, at least on the ambulance side, was last done in 2002 and has automatically renewed each year since then. And so in looking, certainly looking around at some of the challenges that are facing the EMS world, in particular nowadays, just some numbers to throw out there. The town of Winterport is an example. They pay a private ambulance service $325,000 a year, per capita rate of $85 per person, to essentially offset the loss that private ambulance service has each year. The town of Frankfort contributes $75,000 or $60.93 to that same private ambulance service. There was an article recently about Delta Ambulance, and Delta provides ambulance coverage to a number of municipalities in the central part of the state, kind of the Fairfield, Benton, that area. and effective July 2026, they'll be going up $20 to $25 per capita to $55 at minimum. And so we're not the only one having this discussion or a similar discussion or facing a similar challenge right now. Belfast, I think they're right around $26 per capita, but the town manager or the city manager over there had explained to me that it was very low, and that they'll be looking at something a little bit more realistic in the near future. So all of that to say, you know, in looking at our financials, the fire and EMS department budget, when you add in wages, insurance and benefits, is roughly $2.1 million. And that's excluding any capital improvement costs. That's not including the cost of a new ambulance, anything like that. And last year, last fiscal year, the department had 1,211 ambulance calls, and they had, I believe, 889 fire calls. That's in here somewhere. And so using those numbers, the ambulance side represents roughly 58% were ambulance runs of their calls and 42% were fire calls. And so the long kind of way of trying to get to where I got involved taking what could potentially be called the ambulance side of the budget and the fire side of the budget. On the ambulance side, reducing the revenue that we do get from the ambulance service and come up with a net figure. And then taking that, 73% of the total ambulance calls were in Bucksport, 22% Orland, and 4% in Verona Island. And essentially that, as you can see on page 2, came up with an approximate per capita rate of $92 for Bucksport, $62 for Orland, and on the ambulance side, $49 for Verona Island. That's not what I've recommended in the contracts, but that's kind of where the numbers came out. And so what I am essentially looking for from the council is kind of the temperature of where you're at as far as these numbers are concerned. I had put in $50 per capita for Orland, and then $135 per capita for fire and ambulance for Verona Island, which are both less than the approximate per capita rate that I actually calculated. So again, that's kind of, I don't know if Director Gagan or Deputy Chief Denning, if you guys want to kind of add your 2 cents to this on something that we've certainly talked about. And,
No, I think that was very well said, and this formula started many years ago, and like Town Manager Grant said, it has not been looked at in decades. We are providing a service not only to the residents of the town of Bucksport, but my concern, like he said, is that 22% of the time, our employees are providing a service for another town, which I have no problem with at all. But we have to consider that 22% of the time, we're not in Bucksport. And I'm not downing Orland or Verona at all, but it's just a fact that, and the going, the going rates that he's mentioned, we had a meeting on this week. I think that is a fair start as to where we're at. And I know fiscally we're looking at everything and budgets and things of that nature, and I think it's a good start, and it should have been looked at some time ago for sure. And I've mentioned this for a few years now, and now here we are. I'll leave it at that. As my position, I've mentioned it, and I just,
Have either of you had conversations with the leadership in Orland or Verona to discuss this?
we haven't yet. Like I said, I'd like to get, again, just a feeling of where the council is as far as kind of you know, a ballpark that you even want me to stay in.
I don't think these numbers are unreasonable at all. The increases were less than what I had expected they would be, in all honesty. And the fact that I saw that they weren't updated since 2002, the idea that we would sign on to something and replace something that Jeff Robinson had instituted was unbelievable.
I can tell you I've been pinged twice in Orland by a selectman and other. So, yeah, they're aware, and I've directed them to our town manager to do that. I think that we need to incorporate 2 more items to come up with our per capita rate. And the first is, we are about to enter into a third party that handles the billing on the ambulance service. That means the town of Verona Island and Orland do not have to do that billing piece. And our guesstimate, we'll call it a guesstimate, was 5% of our revenue on ambulance, $50,000-ish, as I recall. And I think that we should include, I'm going by page 18 of the packet, where percent of ambulance calls, that it would probably be a good idea that I would support 22% of the billing towards Orland and 4% of the billing towards Verona Island, to incorporate that into our cost per capita. And to include the,
I'm sorry?
and to include the ambulance billing, you mean, as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing that is not incorporated here is the fact that we are on a 24/7 dispatch service here in the town. And I know at my home, when my automatic smoke detector goes off and cell phones out to a central station, they call Bucksport Direct to send a fire engine to my house. And I'm sure there are other people that, you know, have this thing going on. Not only that, when in Orland, on the fire side of things, they deal with Hancock RCC, and they keep the documents and they flow back and forth. When fire and EMS go out here to these towns, yeah, we may be pinged by Hancock or Waldo, wherever the call comes in based on cell towers. But then after that, it's our dispatcher that's doing all the documentation of the times they're towed, when they go out, when they arrive, when they're transporting. And I think there should be a piece of our dispatch also included. So those are the 2 things I'd like to see added.
The only challenge, Councilor Rabs, that I would just say about the billing side of it is that while Orland and Verona don't bill for their ambulance runs, they also don't get to keep the revenue that is received from that billing. That's all kept by the town.
But up until now, going to third party, someone in our office had to do all of that billing.
Correct.
We took that off of their shoulders.
Correct.
And I'm not saying to throw a minimum amount, but I think it should be I'm only one of 7 up here, and what the others decide, but definitely on the, well, anyway, I think there should be something in there for them.
I think at the very least, we should go to your per capita rate that you approximated, the 22%, 4%. Not the under what you suggested here.
Okay.
That's, I'm not on this committee, but that's my opinion.
Well, again,
It's gonna
And
get to you.
staff,
It's gonna get to you.
we talked about this, you know, trying to maintain a balance of not trying to give these towns, who are our neighbors, sticker shock in, you know, in coming up with a new agreement. And so that's kind of where my recommendations came from is, you know, right now Orland's at $27 per capita. $50 per capita is a pretty considerable increase from 27. And so, you know, 62 would be even more of an increase. But
I get it, but these last 3 to 4 years, what it's costing us to
Absolutely.
maintain a staff of fire and police, fire and EMS is
And
That's
just to
what I'm
get everything staffed back up to where we should be, and 25, depending upon which town we talk about, 25 to 29% of the population in these towns are seniors. So the demand for service is gonna be on the rise.
And one, I'm not criticizing the privatized ambulances at all, but if you pay attention, you'll see we have four-wheel drive ambulances that are very crucial in Bucksport, Olin, Verona. If you look at a lot of these privatized, they're the old style vans and I don't think they keep them up to the condition we keep ours in.
No question, no question. I'm,
We did say in the meeting, as Mr. Grant said, that the two things we wanted to do was be fair when we did this and give more than prior notice that was fair to who we're dealing with and not just so the sticker shock was not there, to be fair up front and to give them much more prior notice that this was coming, so.
and we're, truthfully, we are not opinionated on a dollar amount. I would very much support doing that full rate that was calculated. But again, we were just trying to be mindful of, and that's part of the reason also that within the contract, we added a 5% escalator over 3 years to try and get to, a closer point. But again, I'm happy to do that full amount, and
I don't see any issue, and again, census hasn't been updated since 2002. I mean, we're talking per capita and throwing around different rate numbers here, but let's talk big numbers for a different angle of perspective that's in this presentation that we haven't talked about yet. Is that our current fee annually for the town of Verona Island is $54,697. Okay, currently $54,697. This would increase that rate to a fee of $68,445. So we're talking a $14,000 increase that you could easily disperse over the last 23 years.
23 years.
I think it's important that you have conversations with the town leaders on both Orland and Verona. Everyone here knows that I feel that our mutual aid agreement with Orland is very important to me specifically. But what we are proposing here is not a get-rich scenario. It is not a revenue increasing scenario for us. This is literally for us to help cover costs. And the increases are very, very reasonable looking at the math that we have here.
again, I think we're truthfully trying to be fair to our residents who pay for this. The truth of the matter is, as Director Gagan said, and this is just a fact, over 25% of the time, our ambulance is providing a service to somewhere that's not Bucksport.
Yep.
And again, I think in an effort to be fair to our taxpayers, I think that this is an appropriate move to make.
This should have been, and you're right, this should have been done years ago, to go 23 years without this being updated.
And even if we go with the full percentages, I don't know this, but I've still got to assume that's gonna come in under if they privatized.
I don't, if they were gonna try to do something themselves, there's no question.
I mean, you just, excuse me, you heard of one that's $320,000 a year
Right.
to have the ambulance sit there with two people. I mean,
And the response time is nowhere near.
right.
So it's wise for us to get on this and get this updated sooner rather than later. Because that's something that we've run into in the past. We've waited too long to adjust these rates and then the sticker shock takes place instead of the laying out of the gradual increase in Y. So this is just another example of that hurdle that we've set ourselves up for to have to jump over.
Yeah, well, these two municipalities have to set up their budgets starting for July 1st, just like we do, so.
And I asked that
Sooner we
question
get
in our
that.
meeting to make sure they were in a January budget, and it was July.
On the
which was
fiscal
good.
year versus calendar year.
Want to leave time for the services committee? What is the pleasure of the?
Thank you, Director Gagan.
Yes, thank you.
What are you looking for us out of this?
We would have this on a resolve with the updated numbers that you guys have talked about at your next meeting. So that's the recommendation we're looking for.
Okay, does
Can we look at,
Do,
take a peek at,
do you have,
putting dispatch and, or just stay the course as we are? Do we have two sets of numbers or?
When you say dispatch, you're talking this same.
Well, back to my point about, you know, we do the billing.
Mm-hmm,
We have a dispatcher in the background that's taking care of things.
Mhm.
I'm asking, should we,
I'm more inclined to go with the full percentages that Jacob put forward rather than the lower amounts. Cause I think the billing is gonna offset from what they bring in, we're not gonna lose 5% in the end game.
and I don't wanna see anything in our line item billing that would be different than anything that they would obtain from any other service.
okay,
So that's where I stand on that. My question is, do you want this on a resolve to wrap this up now, or do you wanna continue to work this and place this in next year's budget?
well, the intent would be for the agreement to be effective July 1.
Yeah.
So it would be in next year's budget. But we need to get the ball rolling now in order to give the town, because the towns are gonna wanna shop around. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter, and they should be, you know, they should have the option to do that. So if we can give them 6 months to say, we're not renewing the former contract, the one that's in place right now, we have a new contract for you that we want to work out by July 1. If, as long as we, you know, get this wrapped up at your December meeting, we'll have time to do that.
Okay, you don't think you would have time to actively work it if it was placed into next year's budget? Process, not tabled,
No,
but part of,
I
Part
don't
of the
think
work
it's fair to the other communities.
Okay.
I just don't think that they would have enough
enough time.
time. And I think, and I can look in the current contract, there's
Like your
a,
suggestion could be part of this coming year's budget conversation, for example.
there is more, either party shall notify the other in writing 6 months prior to termination.
Okay.
So we have to give them contractually, a 6 months notice, so, but as you guys just mentioned, if we wanna look at other avenues during next year's budget process, we can do that also. But I think it would be good if we can get this kind of in place, get the ball rolling with it.
Okay, motion to place this on a resolve for December's meeting.
so,
Questions? All in favor? Nope. Next item is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
second?
All in favor? Thank you. For you, sir.
We need a second for